3, 2, 1. We are live with the Oregon Grape. Welcome back, everyone. We took a couple weeks off, so sorry about that if you were waiting for another episode sooner. But we had a lot going on, and we have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. We have Jay Meredith in the studio. As some of you might remember, we were trying to get together a debate between John West and one of the representatives from the recall petition, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But it was a little bit harder to get together. We couldn't really figure out terms that everybody was able to agree to, and so we decided to just do these separate interviews. We will be interviewing John West tomorrow, but for today, we got Jay Meredith, and hopefully we're gonna trying to get a little more light shed on this recall petition and all the nuanced issues involved. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks to you and the TOG group for
TOG
invite back to the show. We said when we were here last that assuming we got enough signatures to bring this recall petition to a ballot, that we would love to come back and talk to you again. And so thanks again for the invite. Absolutely.
My favorite. My pleasure. I'm really glad that people are like abbreviating the show, because to me it makes it feel legit. You know, the first like example we had of this was Chris Barnett called it The Grape, and I was like, oh, that sounds good. I feel like we're a real podcast now.
I like TOG better.
TOG is nice. Yeah. We're also calling it the OG. You know, kind of sounds like original gangster, but you know, just a couple of white guys trying to sound gangster. That's what we got going for us here now.
OG is overused though, so I think you really should go with TOG.
TOG is pretty good. Yeah. It almost sounds like its own news network. But so like I said, I would love it. We were talking a little bit before the show. I would love it if we were able to use today's podcast as not just going through the bullet points that everybody who's read the recall petition with is familiar with, and you should have got this in your ballots. What was it? November 25th. When did it go out? It was.
It started landing in mailboxes on Friday of last week. The day after Thanksgiving.
Okay. Yes. So that's when I think I recalled seeing mine in there. But you know, residents of Josephine County, you have gotten this in your ballot now. And, so you have your bullet points on there. And so what would love to do with this podcast is more so just dive into some of the more nuanced, maybe the parts that are a little confused or people are uncertain about. And so I guess what I would like to start by asking you is to give a broader view here before we get into the nuance. Is the main concern, if you were able to boil it down for us, is the main concern that you believe that there has basically been, what do you call it? Like failing to follow the desires of the people, the will of the people. Would you say that is this kind of the summary of where this recall petition came from?
I'd say yes. We have three main bullet points in the legal 200-word legal petition that people are seeing on their ballots now. I would say if I had to choose one of those as being the overarching issue, I would say yes. Not following the will of the people is because that's actually, you know, it's not just one, two, or three people that, you know, there are three main people that have been the spokespeople for the recall effort. I'm one of those three. But there's really dozens and dozens of people that came to us, the few of us, and for the record, all of the original founders of this movement, so to speak, are all Republicans. There are a lot of folks that are some of the folks that are in the John West camp that are supporters of John West think that this is a Democrat effort or, you know, a liberal effort or however you want to put that. But this was actually started by Republicans, Republicans that wanted to just hold one of our own accountable for good behavior or bad behavior in this case. The overarching issue is, you know, myself as one of several people that got this started, we experienced, some of us personally experienced bad behavior when we were trying to do business with the county, bad behavior from Commissioner West. I've been watching county meetings for about 12 years now because I've been a very strong...
You don't have cable at your house, or it's just...
It's all online these days.
You never take a break and, watch The Office or anything?
I watch a lot of TV at home because I do a lot of work from home.
Yeah.
As an accountant, everything can be done online these days, and so I'm always in front of my computer. So, for the last 12 years, I have been watching or listening to every single county commissioner meeting that has taken place in the last 12 years because
Where did that spawn from? Why did you become so interested in that? And we'll get back to the recall petition, but
yeah, we talked about a lot of topics, in the last time that Lily Morgan and I were here. But in 2012, Josephine County, the governmental entity, Josephine County, hit a financial crisis. We lost,
I think
the majority of the federal funding sources that used to support our law enforcement and justice programs. Mm-hmm. So at the county level, we went into financial crisis. At the time, I was the finance director for the city of Grants Pass, and that's a different entity than Josephine County. But we're right across the parking lot from the Josephine County courthouse, the city hall there, and as the finance director for the City of Grants Pass, I was regularly involved in discussions on how do we fund city police and city fire services and all the other city services for that matter. So I had gotten involved in supporting some city police and fire funding efforts or ballot measures that had happened in the years preceding. And when the county had to lay off, I think it was almost 200 staff members when they lost a good part of their federal funding back then. And so,
did you say 200?
It was almost 200 staff
Wow.
members. So, like 2/3 of the folks that worked in law enforcement and justice programs at Josephine County, I think almost 2/3 of the folks got laid off.
It's quite a chunk.
They were literally letting people out of the jail. There was like a big front page article.
Yeah, that's how Eddie got out. No. Yeah.
So there may have been some people like Eddie that benefited from the lack of funding for our local criminal justice system. But at that point, I was asked to get involved in. I was just one of several people that. I don't necessarily call myself a community leader, but there were several people that are perceived as community leaders in a room. There was about 50 of us right after this happened. This is not acceptable because we quickly went to having less law enforcement in rural Josephine County. So the area of Josephine County outside the city limits of Grants Pass, we had less law enforcement services and personnel than most third world countries. Mm-hmm. Like less law enforcement per capita than.
So this led to you just paying much more attention to both the counties and the city's decision making process.
Yeah. So we got a bunch of community leaders in the room, and it was actually Travis Boersma of Dutch Brothers that led a couple of strategic planning sessions. We're like, this is not a good recipe. Not having law enforcement is not a recipe for a healthy community.
Yeah.
And so we got a bunch of people in the room. We ended up forming a nonprofit organization that was, its mission was to help get Josephine County law enforcement back on its feet. And somehow I ended up being the president and chair of that organization. Mm-hmm. And so I got to work with a lot of people in law enforcement, a lot of people that worked for the county, a lot of our local police officers became friends of mine, or sheriff deputies became friends of mine.
So this issue with the law enforcement led to you basically just paying a lot more attention to all these decisions happening both in the county and the city, and that led to you paying more attention to basically what newly elected Commissioner John West was doing. And
well, yeah. So and that's what actually sparked me into considering this recall and calling people about why do you think Mr. West is making these decisions the way he is? Why are these two commissioners recommending we do X, Y, and Z? And in most of Commissioner West's term in office, which is now approaching 2 years, two of his first 4 years in office, it's been Commissioner West, Commissioner Bartschiger, and Dan DeYoung until he resigned from office a few months ago. And so it was usually Commissioner Bartschiger and Commissioner West making some decisions that a lot of people in the community that I had become friends with in the last 12 years a lot of people in the community started questioning those decisions.
Well, one of the complaints that I heard people making is against your recall petition is why target John West when it's a board of 3, right? And so is there a reason that you didn't, because obviously he can't make decisions on his own, is there a reason you guys went after John West and not after any of the other 2 commissioners?
Yes. In fact, if Commissioner Bartschigger had been only halfway through his 4-year term in office, he would probably be the subject of a recall as well. Because most of the very controversial decisions that the community is upset about were made by 2-to-1 votes, which means that Commissioner West was the tie-breaking vote. Had Commissioner West voted a different way, most of these decisions would have gone a different way. And so, Commissioner West, for anything that requires a vote of the county commissioners, no one commissioner can do anything by themselves for anything that requires an official vote.
So it just didn't feel necessary to put anything against Bartschigger because he was going to be out of there soon anyways.
Right. Yeah. So by the time the recall happens, the newly elected county commissioners would be in office, or would be within a few days of being in office. Yeah. So the recall committee, I can say that the recall committee actually had a very serious discussion about whether to proceed with a recall for Commissioner Bartschigger as well. And it was almost like almost half the people wanted to do a recall for Commissioner Bartschigger and half didn't. I was in the half that didn't because it seems petty to recall somebody.
Yeah, it seemed like more work than it would actually be advantageous.
They'll only have a few days left in office, So a lot of the decisions that the community is upset about, this is not about me, it's not about the spokespeople for the recall, but a lot of the decisions that the community is upset about are the result of decisions that were 2-to-1 votes. Typically Commissioner Bartschigger and Commissioner West voting one way, and whatever, the third commissioner, in this case, Commissioner Dan DeYoung, voted the other way.
Yeah. So ignoring the will of the voter, we elect these officials and we give them these powers to make these decisions for us, and we elect people that we trust are going to act in accordance with the will of the voter, right? Even back to the founding of this country, we threw a bunch of tea in the harbor because we felt like we weren't being represented, right? And so what are these main points where you feel it was most clear that John West was ignoring the will of the voter?
The most commonly known decisions, the reasons why several, or I could say thousands of Josephine County residents at this point are throwing tea in the Rogue River is because the one that really got a lot of people upset was the defunding of the OSU Extension Service District, and I appreciated the fact that there was a brand new local nonprofit formed to do the youth and ag program in a different way. That's communities right, and from what I've heard, that program is working out well.
Well, and just for the viewers, that was formed after there was sort of this kind of like faith issue where some people in the club were told they weren't allowed to have crosses on their shirts, and so they basically did a bit of an exodus and said, "Fine, we'll start our own thing." And it ended up doing very, very well. Yeah, and it's a private thing that they're doing. So
but that was just one of many programs that were part of this district, and there were a lot of kids and some 4-H programs that were left out in the cold after that decision.
You're talking like Master Gardeners and the shooting club. The shooting club is very small. There's only a few people in it. But were there any others that were significant that you felt got left out?
There's a long list of basically farming and support programs that the OSU Extension Service offered here in Josephine County, as they offer to any other county that participates in the Extension Service. So you've got a lot of farmers and people that used to rely on these support services, but now they don't have it anymore. And so it wasn't just the 4-H programs or the Master Gardeners; those were the most popular reasons, but the basic concept is the basic concept of proper governance is if something is voted in by a vote of the people, to reverse that or to get rid of that, it should be a vote of the people to get rid of that as well. And so
So now what I was told on this is that, because I think I see what you're getting at here. And the question that I'm kind of looking for during your explanations is, when is this ignoring the will of the voter? And when is this just a decision that a number of the population disagrees with, right? Because the thing is my family grew up doing 4-H. I think it was great that these people went and started their own club, because I think that's totally inappropriate to like restrict people's faith, right? So for me, defunding OSU has very little effect. And so I would not say that my will was ignored, because I honestly, it just doesn't affect me, right? And so when, in your eyes, does it become ignoring the will of the voter instead of just being a decision that a number of people disagree with?
Well, I could go into that in some level of detail, but when, in my personal opinion, you cross that line when you make a decision that is contrary to what the public has actually voted on. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, this is a voter-approved services district that provided a series of services, and they, by a vote of 2 of the 3 county commissioners, they just got rid of it. And this was in opposition to a ton of testimony. Like there haven't been very many situations where that many people showed up at a series of county commissioner meetings to say, please don't do this, and here's why. And it wasn't necessarily because of the 4-H group. It wasn't the youth and ag group or the new youth and ag group that said don't. That was not the main reason people were showing up and saying don't do this. But that was a few people. That was the reason for a few of the people that showed up. But dozens and dozens of people showing up to the county commissioner meeting saying, please don't do this, and here's why. And they completely ignored all of that testimony. And that we're talking about something that was voter approved. So the proper process, and that district is still in place today. They've just chosen to defund it. Yeah. And so the proper process would have been to take it back to the voters and say, okay, going forward, we see this as the proper, or we don't think this is necessary anymore. Voters, we want you to consider repealing this. And that could have been, the commissioners could have easily put that on the ballot.
Now, my understanding of this is that they were given the approval to use this money for the OSU thing, and that was something that the voters approved for. But what I want to know is that was it illegal for them to reallocate the funds or to refuse to give the funds, or was this just a decision that you felt was not representative of the public's desires?
No, I didn't observe that they did anything illegal. Okay. It's just not honoring the wishes of the voters. A proper process, whether you're talking about a law enforcement district, which is another example that I'd like to talk about here in a moment, whether you're talking about the brand new, newly approved voter law enforcement district that was approved by Josephine County voters in November of 2023, or something that was approved by voters years ago, the common courtesy, or sometimes the law, the legal ramifications is, if something is approved by voters, it has to be repealed by voters, or it has to be changed by voters. That's typically the way it's supposed to work. Yeah, and so that's why so many people get upset with the Oregon legislature, because you can have a voter-approved measure that, unless it's a constitutional amendment, so there's different ways of changing state law, for example. So you've got a constitutional amendment, and then you've got just a ballot measure that is just changes state law, but it's not a full-blown constitutional amendment. So I actually learned about this several years ago when we were trying to find ways to help increase funding for local law enforcement. So, so folks like Eddie wouldn't be allowed to get out of jail. Yeah. So one of the things that we pursued years ago, this was around 2014, 2015, we pursued a change in state constitutional law that would have brought some money back to each of the counties across Oregon and let them decide how to spend those dollars in certain categories of use. Okay. So we put together a constitutional ballot measure, and we started gathering signatures for that. It was called the local control. Had local control in the name. It was like Oregon Lottery Local Control Measure, something along those lines. Basically, it would have been the state dollars that come from the Oregon Lottery. A percentage of those state dollars would come back to the counties that they originated in
to be used for law enforcement.
And the counties could choose to use them for law enforcement, economic development, for school. There was a series of things that they could use it for. In Josephine County's case, they could have used a significant amount of those dollars for local law enforcement.
So the law enforcement one is an interesting one, and it is one of the nuanced ones. And from what I believe, what you're kind of getting at is that John West ignored the will of the voters by defunding law enforcement. Now, what I was told was that the reason that law enforcement had less of a budget this year is because a grant ended and that it was outside of the control of the commissioners. Can you speak to that at all?
I think that grant comment was made in reference to the FireWise program. I don't think that is related to the law enforcement question. And so we can get to that as well. But in regards to law enforcement, county voters just approved a new law enforcement services district in November of 2023. You might have seen, online on Facebook or in the paper, some people complaining about their tax rates being slightly higher or their tax
Is
amounts.
law enforcement funded at least in part by property tax?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is now.
Where was the new district?
So the district encompasses, and this is a district that just provides for the sheriff's office services. So mainly your patrol deputies that are serving in the areas outside the city of Grants Pass. And so that's mainly where these funds were to go to. I think some of the funding was meant to go to dispatch as well, because it's hard to provide law enforcement services if you don't have the right amount of dispatch personnel as well that are.
And if we're talking outside Grants Pass, we're talking sheriff department then?
Yeah, so this was entirely for the sheriff.
Okay.
And so the sheriff was the main one out campaigning for this.
So for areas out like Williams, Merlin, all the kind of rural areas, that's where it was supposed to go?
Entirety of Josephine County outside the city of Grants Pass.
Okay.
Outside the city limits of Grants Pass.
So why do you believe he supposedly defunded this? Because what I had heard was that the granted, and that's why there was less money in the budget. But what did you see? Where did you see him take the money from? Did he reallocate it somewhere else? Why was this money not given to the sheriff's department, in your opinion?
Yeah, so this brand new law enforcement services district, it will bring in the early years, it will bring in about $5.3 million per year.
Okay.
And so that's enough. The sheriff, when he was out campaigning, and the campaign said that this is enough to add about 20 staff members to 20 fully loaded staff members to the sheriff budget.
When and how was this district approved?
So it was a measure that the county commissioners in the middle of 2023, they put it on the ballot for November of 2023.
So this was something that West approved?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, that's, West didn't approve it. Only voters can approve something like this.
Oh, okay.
But West approved to put it on the ballot and let voters decide.
Okay.
And I believe all three commissioners approved to just put it on the ballot and let voters decide.
Okay.
And so the voters are in control here, and they're the ones that said, yes, we want slightly higher taxes and more law enforcement services. So for the first time ever after that was approved in November of 2023, I thought, okay, finally we're back to a reasonable level of law enforcement services that most communities across the United States have. So I was very happy to see that voters approved that in November of 23.
Did this start getting implemented at all? Did people get taxed in 2023? Or, well, I guess it wouldn't have happened until 2024 is when that additional tax was going on.
The tax bills for the current fiscal year, which starts in July of each year, people just got their tax bills about 2 months ago as we speak today. And so that's when people, hey, why did my taxes go up a little bit? And if you look at the detail and how that compared to the previous year, part of that reason is because there's a new law enforcement services district on your combined tax bill.
Yeah.
And so all of the districts that share in the property tax rate, cities, school districts, Road Community College, they all have a share of the tax rate.
Okay. So this district was approved. People are getting taxed more. And then you're saying that John West just refused to give it to the law enforcement? What happened there?
Yeah. So this new law enforcement services district in the current fiscal year brings in $5.3 million per year. It was supposed to add the equivalent of about 20 new sheriff deputies and dispatch and sheriff personnel. And so when they got the recommended budget documents in May of, I think it was May of this year, there was zero new staff members in the sheriff budget. So as a long-time 12-year...
Which, if I'm not wrong, later got adjusted to 5.
Yes.
I believe they later approved 5 new deputies. Yeah.
Correct. So there was 0 when it first came before them. And see, the county commissioners, they sort of set the rules of what the finance director puts in the budget before the budget committee sees it in, around May of each year. So fiscal year ends in June 30th. So they have to approve each year. They have to approve a new budget by the end of June. Okay. And so there was 0 new personnel, and that's partially because of the directions that the county commissioner gave to the finance director about how she and her staff were to prepare the budget for this year. So that's strike one.
And this is something that is within the power of the commissioners to decide, correct? They are just allowed to, restrict funds or reallocate funds. You're just saying that this was in contrast to the will of the voter.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so they chose to, so the sheriff is funded by a combination of sources. Now property taxes, it used to be highly funded by federal funding. That went away in 2012 when I started watching, the county goings on much more closely than I used to. So after that went away, in the county's own property taxes and other revenues are the biggest part of support for law enforcement these days. It's not grant funding. There was some grant funding in the sheriff budget, but that was related to marijuana and drug enforcement, and they had a bunch of positions that were unfilled. But basically, the new positions that were supposed to be in the budget as a result of voters approving this new law enforcement services district, none of those positions were in the budget when it was brought forward. So again, that's strike one.
So one of my thoughts is when you're looking for motive, right, is even politically, it does not make sense to restrict funding to law enforcement. So could you talk a little bit to what your perceived idea of West's motive was? And obviously, of course, we're saying West, but this is something that the entire board has to approve. But is there a reason, was there a motive that you could clearly see here?
Well, Mr. West campaigned on low tax rates and cutting the fat, and that's all fine and dandy, but there is no fat to cut in the law enforcement. I don't know the other budgets of the county as well as I do law enforcement. But
so you think he was trying to deliver on a campaign promise, even if it wasn't helpful to the community?
Well, that's what it appears, and I'll let Mr. West speak to that. But what actually happened was completely against what the county voters just voted on 6 months before this series of budget decisions. And so that's the main beef here. So strike one was taking some general fund revenues. And I, the last time we were here, I showed you a chart of how much general fund revenues are typically provided to the sheriff's office each year, and they dropped that drastically in the current fiscal year. And so that chart that shows the funding provided by the county general fund is just go way down in the current year that we talked about last time I was here. That was one of those decisions that was made before they even got into the budget committee meetings, and that is largely driven by the directions that the county commissioners gave to the finance director to prepare the budget. So they had some other ideas of what they wanted to do with those funds, and that was, so they did not use the same amount of general funds that they usually use each year for the county sheriff. And so there were a lot of people, including even one budget committee member of the county. So the budget committee is made up of the 3 commissioners plus 3 members of the public. One of the budget committee members was very upset about that. And called them out on, or tried to call them out on this, because that's not what voters were told when they approved the law enforcement services district in November of the previous year. They were told that they would get more law enforcement services and more personnel. And so they felt like and I've heard from several other people in the community, they felt like it was a bait and switch and just a really bad move by the county commissioners. So this is another one of those 2-to-1 votes when it came to the final budget decision. This was West and Barchiger voting one way and former Commissioner Dan DeYoung voting the other way. So had West made a decision, a different decision, we wouldn't have had this concern. So West was all the major controversial votes. West was always the tiebreaker. So he alone could have altered the outcome of each one of these very controversial decisions. And so when we got to, and I sat through all these budget meetings, I had somebody come to me saying, hey, the sheriff would like you to look at this year's budget recommendation. And, we don't understand why there aren't any new personnel in the recommended budget after the county voters just approved this new law enforcement services district. So knowing that I had previously been involved in many, many discussions about how do we properly fund our county law enforcement programs, I had people coming to me saying, could you please analyze this budget and what's going on here and why are they not doing what the voters just approved? And so I did. And then I showed up to all of the county budget meetings this year and expressed my opinion of how they can properly fund what the voters just approved. And they completely ignored my testimony. They completely ignored the testimony of many people that showed up to last year's budget season.
And you believe this
budget season is usually a boring set of meetings that, talking about numbers, it's usually a pretty boring, uncontroversial process, but so not this year.
Yeah. Your view, your view when you kind of like got to analyze these budgets was that there was money available, and you think that that West, perhaps along with Barchiger, decided to hold back that funding, presumably to kind of deliver on the campaign promise. Is that sort of like the kind of view that you have of it?
Yeah, that's one way of saying it. That's a fairly accurate way of saying it. So I did an analysis. I spent hours developing an analysis of the budget and how they could provide the proper amount of resources to the sheriff and to law enforcement programs without impacting the budget of any other county programs, and by keeping the budget very, very well balanced. And so I shared that with the sheriff. I shared that analysis with the other people in the community that were very concerned about what the county commissioners were about to do, or what it appeared that they were about to do. And it was essentially ignored. The sheriff said, wow, thank you for this analysis. I really appreciate your help in this. And then the county commissioners proceeded to just ignore that advice. Yeah. And so,
well, this will definitely be an interesting one to go over with John West when we have him on, because like I said, I had heard some different things from both sides on this, and like I said, one of them was that there was grant funding that ended, and there was something kind of outside of the commissioner's control, and perhaps that's why it just sort of leveled out, like there wasn't that additional funding from this new tax, because perhaps at the same time that new funding was coming in, the grant was ending. So there may be something going on there, but that's just why it would be a great thing to go over with Wes.
Yeah, let me share just a little bit more detail, since you'll be asking.
Sure, and then I do want to move on to some of the other areas where you felt like this, rejecting the will of the voter thing happened.
Yeah, so what they brought in a specialist so there is still some federal funding that goes into the county general fund therefore into county law enforcement programs.
Which is like a form of grant funding coming from federal?
Yeah, you could say it's a form of grant funding. It's just really just a federal act that provides some funding they call it the Secure Rural Schools Act, which is a term you may have heard before if you follow local goings on. But basically, because it's basically the federal act that replaced the timber harvesting revenue sharing agreement that was done back in I think back in like the World War II days is around the time when they call it the ONC agreement. So the Oregon and
dates
California.
Back that far, huh?
Yeah. So there was a big federal agreement. There was a big agreement done with the federal government for I think it's 18 different Oregon counties, basically all the counties of Western Oregon. So it includes Southwestern Oregon all the way up to Portland, the Portland area, I think. So the 50% of the revenue that comes from timber harvesting is on federal land in these counties. Anything that's designated as ONC.
Yeah. Okay. I am familiar with this. Yeah.
That used to be the revenue source that supported our local law enforcement programs, not just in Josephine County, but in the other 18 Oregon counties relied on it heavily as well. And so when that went away, a new series of agreements, every time they renew the new federal agreement that replaces some of these funds, it seems like it dwindles every year. Yeah. So it's dwindling again and again and again, and they don't know what they're going to get next. It's either next year or the year after that when there has to be another federal agreement done to continue what has been. So their best projection is it's going to be somewhere between the same amount that we have been getting in recent years, or maybe about $1 million per year less. Mm-hmm. So we now have a new voter-approved revenue source for a new $5.3 million per year, and a federal funding source that is very uncertain, but probably won't be any worse than maybe $1 million less in the next year. So we've got a net positive. At worst case scenario, we've got a net positive of $4.3 million more per year in revenue going forward.
And this is something that you were able to analyze and see in the budgets then?
Yeah. They did a big presentation at the start of this year's budget process. Okay. And so they tried to make the excuse, because they have what appears to be an agenda. They want to cut things, and they have an agenda, and they have a lot of excuses for making the decisions the way they did. But those excuses are not valid excuses. They're misrepresentation of what the truth really is. Yeah. And that's actually why, the reason why I'm really glad that we're here, that I'm here and get to talk to you again. And hopefully, a lot of people get to see this, because all we want is the truth to get out there, and then let the people decide.
Well, that's definitely an interesting one, and I'm looking forward to asking Wes's kind of response on it and on why. And of course, we are talking about all commissioners making this decision, but on why that funding was restricted. So, kind of on that string of ignoring the will of the voter, I wanted to talk to you about the library district withdrawal problem, because this is actually one where I'll be super honest. I felt like it was misrepresented by the recall petition, because the idea that was, just to kind of preface it for the viewer, the idea was that John West kind of headed up this intentional financial attack against the library by encouraging people to withdraw from the district. And of course, they receive their funding from the amount of districts that they serve. And so that would naturally financially damage the library. Now, I have a little bit of a biased view on this, because I think libraries are a little bit obsolete. As a kid, I really enjoyed it. Information is widely available for free, and I believe the tax, if you live in a library district, is it close to $200 property tax for the average person, and I think a library card is $60. So financially, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. If I was in a library district, I would not want to be a part of it. I would want to withdraw. And the reason that I felt like this was misrepresented by the recall petition is because I spoke to someone who had been trying for 2 years to withdraw from the library district, and she told me that she had been trying for 2 years to withdraw from the library district. And of course, John West wasn't even in office until about a year and, what would it be, 8 months, 9 months, somewhere around there. Anyways, it was before
he had been in office for about 10 months, 11 months, when the library district thing started getting to be very controversial.
So either way, this woman had begun trying to withdraw from the district not long before, but before West was in office. And so the way that the recall petition has characterized this, in the sense that John West was heading this financial attack against the library, I just don't buy that from what I've seen from it. So I would love to hear your thoughts on it, on why that was the conclusion you guys arrived at.
Yeah, and I'm glad we get to talk about this one too, because this is one that that has been controversial, and a lot of folks that are say vote yes to the recall have one set of opinions, and a lot of folks that don't see this point of view say, I don't understand this. So glad we're talking about this one. So the a political I'll just call him a political ally of Commissioner West, was the first one to test this, and this is actually a really, really big deal for. Are
we allowed to give names on this, or just to be respectful? Should we?
Let's just not give names.
Okay.
I don't. This is
That's
not.
Fair.
This is not about me. This is about a commissioner, an elected commissioner that is facing a recall. There's no reason to bring names into it, but I can say that the first person who was like the test case for withdrawing from the district is there's no secret that he's I'll call him a political ally of Commissioner West, He and his wife are both political
Now, this is a
allies
thing
of
that
Commissioner
seems like
West.
such a vague term, because in a sense, anybody could be a political ally if you share political ideology with somebody, you know? And so what is it about these people involved that you believe is less of shared ideologies and more of like some kind of collusion or conspiracy between them?
So the basically the certain leaders of the local Josephine County Republican Party were in strong support of West getting in office and remain to be strongly in support of Commissioner West. Now, those are just what I see as leaders of the Josephine County Republican Party. That's not your average Republican part, because I'm a Republican. The people who started this recall measure are all Republicans.
Sure.
And there's actually a very diverse group of people from all sides of the political spectrum that support this recall effort. But when you follow the local political measures and the local political discussions as closely as I have over the past 15, 16 years, both with the city and the county, you kind of know who runs in the political crowds and who supports things, and it's very commonly the same names that are supporting certain types of things. So Commissioner West was basically part of he is and continues to be one of the leaders of the local Republican Party.
So I think I understand what you're saying is that it seems like you're saying it's pretty clear that these people are in support of John West. Why is it not just John West assisting his constituents? Why is it John West colluding with political, what did you say, allies?
Well, in this case, what they tried to do was illegal. The form of how they were trying to allow somebody to withdraw from the library district was illegal. And so if you're pursuing something that is a legal political change or law change, that's one thing. But if you're pursuing something that's illegal and improper, that's quite another.
Yeah. And to be fair, on the other side, John West actually openly admitted that a mistake was made on a form, and they apparently corrected it very quickly. So does that not show that there was at least an intention to go about this according to the right process?
Well, they did correct it, but it took a lawsuit to correct it. So they refused to correct it until the lawsuit was filed.
And based on the timeline, that is how you saw it happen. It was you believe strongly that this would have just continued if it weren't for the lawsuit.
Absolutely, it would.
Okay.
Because Commissioner West spearheaded this effort, and why do you say that? Why do you say that he spearheaded this? Because, like I was saying, it seemed like this was going on before he was in office. It didn't come before in a public agenda until about 10 or 11 months after he was in office. Okay. And so this did not come. In fact, it was around October, November. So that's 10, 11 months after he came into office. There was not any public words about any of this. Now,
so basically what you're saying is there may have been people who were trying to withdraw, but it never gained any ground until West was in office. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. In fact, the person who was the test case on getting out of the library district or trying to, and I don't fault them for trying to. I understand the reasons, but this is about a bad decision of Commissioner West and one other commissioner that approved this illegally to happen. The person who tried to get out of the library district actually ran for an elected seat on the library board. And so anyway, so they were not running because they wanted to do their part in proper governance of the library board. They were running for the board to dismantle the library district.
When I actually do know the individual we're talking about, and his story was that he was actually, I believe, if I'm remembering this right, his story was that he was actually asked to run, and that maybe it wasn't something that he was pursuing intentionally, but that he was asked to do it. And you could say that there was something corrupt or dishonest happening there, or just something that was inappropriate. But you could also say that he didn't like how the library district was being run. He thought that he would try and change it. When he wasn't able to change it, he was like, okay, well, I don't want to be a part of it. If you can't join them, beat them. Or wait, how do you say? If you can't join them, leave the library district. I believe that's how the saying goes.
And that's all fine. We don't need to go into details on him necessarily. But
sure.
But here's what happened. Commissioner West has done a lot of things in the political arena with his supporters or his political allies and people that he works with to accomplish certain things in the political arena. We're upset about this one, and lots of people support the library and are upset about this one because he tried to go about it through illegal means.
Now, when do you feel that this becomes inappropriate? Because, in a sense, it is a commissioner's job to try and facilitate these issues and solve these issues for the constituents, And so if I were to come to West and say, hey, I don't feel like this library district is serving me, I'd like to withdraw, and he were to assist me in that, why is that such a malicious thing in your eyes?
Because not only does that unravel the what the voters said, which is one of the primary concerns, but that would destabilize government service districts across the state of Oregon. And so this is not just about the Josephine County Library District. This was about all the service districts across the state of Oregon. So
you thought it would set a precedent that would damage other libraries?
And it wasn't just me. I'm just repeating what the library district's attorneys and so the library district had to go to this group called the Special Districts Association of Oregon to get support, because this was not just about the library district. This could have destabilized districts across the state of Oregon. They allow this, and if it's legally allowed, and it goes through the court process, and if in fact they did it right, and somebody could withdraw from the library district that easily, that would literally destabilize districts across.
I could see that being a problem
across the whole state.
Sure, yeah.
So you got an area where a district area. The district has boundaries just like cities have boundaries. So you got a district area where the majority of voters said, yes, we want this district in place. And so, and they're all being served by the district at some level. Now, I understand that the people that wanted to get out of the district, they probably never use the library and don't see the value in it. And I don't fault them for wanting to get out of the district, but
they had a political disagreement with it. I remember the last time I was in there, the type of books they're promoting, it's all about how to parent your transgender teen and all of this stuff, and anti-racist baby. And so I could all I'm saying is that I can definitely understand someone not wanting to be a part of the library district, not wanting their tax dollars to go towards something they're not benefiting from.
Yeah, and I get that as well. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I get it. And so what do you think when I tell you that in the average month, 20,000 items are checked out of the library? Is that something that
20,000?
20,000.
Yeah, it's a good number. Yeah,
that the library is being used now. It may not be being used by a whole bunch of people. The people that want it out of the district, I know, don't use it and don't see the value in it. But 20,000 items per month, according to the library staff and the board, the board of the library. 20,000 items per month are checked out and used by. So that's
how often? What is that in a month?
20,000 per month is what they have been saying lately.
Yeah.
So that's not an insignificant use. I mean, the library is being used, and they have digital subscription services too. So I'm sure there's a lot of digital items included in that $20,000 number. But this is something approved by voters, by the majority of voters. It is being used. The library has proven over and over again that it is being used. The amount of people that volunteer to help keep the library running, if they didn't have volunteers, the library's budget would probably be 4 or 5 times the size that it is if they had to use paid staff members to do everything that the library does. I mean, you may not use the library and you may not agree with it, but the majority of people within the boundaries of a library district use it and use it frequently.
Yeah. Yeah, no, once again, it's a very interesting issue. And, it'll be a great one to kind of hear West's response on why that decision was made by the board. And yeah, it's, from what I heard, there was a process to withdraw from the library district. It's not like it was something that was completely unprecedented. But it seems like you're kind of explaining that this could be a bad precedent to set. It could cause a lot of problems, not just with this library, but other libraries in the area. And so, no, it's definitely an interesting one to go over.
And this is not my political view of the library, or
Sure.
And I understand why some people wanted to consider this, but that's just not the law and not how it works with special districts, by the letter of the law. Now, why is West being cited for the villain in this case? Because he's the one that spearheaded getting everybody on the agenda to try and withdraw from the district. And the early people that tried to withdraw from the district, it wasn't just that one test case. It was like it was a week or two right after the first one was approved, illegally approved, and then the library, as I understand, the representatives of the library, including the attorney representing the library, said, they tried to they placed on an agenda. They didn't act on it, but they placed on a weekly business session when they make their weekly decisions and act on their weekly agenda items. They put on the agenda, I think it was like 5 or 6 additional people that were going to withdraw from the library district right after the first one was approved. You look at the names that were on that list is all people that Mr. West works with regularly. And that would have continued.
So you're saying it seemed fishy that it all happened that quickly, or
Yeah, it was clear that Commissioner West had a long list of political allies that he was going to have withdraw from the library district, and that would have absolutely dismantled and financially hurt the district. Because a lot of people, if they don't have kids or don't use the library, they probably would have done the same thing. I can save $100 a year if I just fill out some paperwork and pay a fee to get get out of the library district. A lot of people would have done the same thing, and not only would have that destabilized the library district, but it would have set a pretty bad precedence for special districts across Oregon. And so, I don't agree with all districts that are out there necessarily, because some things can be done cheaper and better in the private sector, but there are a lot of districts that provide a lot of important safety services out there, and I don't think law enforcement districts are even something that you can legally withdraw from, but there are a lot of districts that provide very important needed services in communities across Oregon that would have faced the same sort of destabilization risks.
Okay. Well, okay. So I think, do you feel like that has covered fairly well the ignoring the will of the voter aspect? What are some of the other pressing issues that you saw in this? Where, because the thing is when I'm going through this recall petition, and we've tried to research, I kind of told you that I kind of took a break off of kind of researching and paying attention to this stuff. But what I saw when I went through this recall petition is, I could see why someone would disagree with that decision, budgetary decisions, and things like that. But I want to get into the things that you really see as more egregious, that truly kind of drove you towards getting in on this recall petition. So we've kind of gone the ignoring the will of the voter thing. There's some issues in the recall where you actually felt like the law was broken. Is that true?
Yes, several instances.
Let's go over some of that stuff then, the areas where you actually thought that state law or local county law was broken.
Yeah, so we'll start with an item that we talked about last time. Commissioner West, unfortunately, has been very active in the political arena for many years before he was commissioner, and is even more active now that he is a county commissioner. So unfortunately, he has not followed the state campaign finance laws. Anytime, as we talked about last time that we were here, anytime you spend more than $250 in money to support or oppose any candidate or measure that's on the ballot, you have to report that to the Oregon Secretary of State and the ORSTAR system. I
did have a question on that because the last interview that we did with you and Lily, you brought some papers that was from the manual on campaign financing. And what I wanted to know is, where can this statute be found in state law? Because what I was shown was kind of a manual for campaign finance. But what I wanted to know, because you probably know that West is basically pushing back against this with a freedom of speech argument. And so far, nothing has come against him. There hasn't been any lawsuit against him. And of course, we had these, oh my gosh, what are all these? You got to help me out with this.
You're talking about the ethics law violations?
The ethics violations, yeah. So as far as I know, there hasn't been an ethics violation against him on this. So I guess I have a few questions. One is this actually part of state law? And how does that differ from this campaign finance manual? And why has nothing come from this? Because it sounds like if it's legitimate, that it is a real violation of the law, isn't it?
It's absolutely a violation of the law, and I will give you a specific ORS reference. I just don't. Okay. I don't know it off the top of my head. I think it's like 260 point something, but okay. I'll give you an actual. If you give me like 60 seconds to look on my phone, I can probably find it, or maybe like 2 minutes.
Well, you want to know something? If you want to send it to me later, I can probably link it in the video, or we can have a pop up or something. So we can probably do that.
I can show you the specific Oregon revised statute reference. Okay. So. The state elections manual that I provided last time we were here, that was created from the state law that says that specifically. So the language.
Why has nothing come from this? Wes felt very confident that he had an argument against this with the kind of freedom of speech argument. So why has nothing come up against him on this?
Well, it's not a freedom of speech issue. The law is very clear. Just because it hasn't been reported yet doesn't mean he hasn't broken the law. So if I have a video of you and of going 120 miles an hour down Redwood Highway, and I've got a little thing that measures how fast you're going, just because a police officer didn't pull you over doesn't mean you didn't break the law.
My method is just be faster than the radar gun.
Yeah. So that works in Josephine County because, as we've talked about, we're lacking in financial resources in the justice system.
Sure. Yeah. Okay,
but
so you're saying just because nothing's come from it yet doesn't mean that nothing will? Do you expect something to?
It is certainly possible. Commissioner West is, unfortunately, I don't like to speak about anybody in this way, but Commissioner West has acted this way towards me, so I can say this. This is both for me and many other people that have been treated this way. Commissioner West is a very intimidating guy when you vocalize that you're not happy with him about something. He has filed recently, and that's why I'm trying to use my words carefully. He has recently filed a $500,000 lawsuit against a local media person, somebody who just started a brand new local newspaper, a digital online newspaper, back in January of this year, the Grants Pass Tribune. And the Grants Pass Tribune it's no secret that after they learned of why we filed the petition the way we did, we met them earlier. Actually, I met them. I met the guy that started and is the founder of that newspaper earlier this year.
Well, no, you've kind of heard our opinion on that particular news outlet. The guy John Riccio, he's honestly, in my opinion, he seems a little bit like a shady guy. He uses these fake names in his articles. He uses like multiple different pen names to give like different stories and kind of pins them, kind of like throws them off as if they're different people. And I think that's one thing if you're Dr. Seuss and you're writing kids books. I think it's a different thing if you're trying to put off stories that are supposed to be objective news. So I there's a little bit of iffiness on the credibility of that news outlet, in my opinion. So I'm just want to preface that, but please continue.
I'm actually met the founder of this newspaper earlier this year, and I started writing some articles for them because I've got some when I have some recommendations on how the city of Grants Pass or Josephine County can do things better. I like to get it out in any ways that I can. So I've been a writer for the what's considered the local conservative paper, the Oregon Eagle. I've been a writer for the Eagle ever since the Eagle started publishing a few years ago. I was in I had written an article in the very first edition of the Eagle, and when I saw that earlier this year, when the Grants Pass Tribune was writing things about the city of Grants Pass, I was like, I don't agree with what you wrote about this particular city financial issue, budget issue. And, I've got a lot of history of working with city budgets. Let me tell you what's actually going on here. So I reached out to him and learned a little bit about why he founded the paper and learned a little bit about him personally. And so I've been a contributing journalist for that paper ever
Did you
since.
say he started back in June? Was it that
It
recent?
was January of this year.
Oh, January of this year. Okay.
I think the first issue was January of this year. So I started seeing some things from the Tribune earlier this year, and I was like, what is this Tribune thing? I don't know anything about this. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to him when he wrote an article about the city budget that I had some questions about. And so I got to meet him earlier this year, and then I started writing some things for him, mainly about City of Grants Pass goings on, because I'm a little bit more familiar with that, but also about when we got to budget season this year for both the city and the county. Both the City of Grants Pass and Josephine County made some mistakes in relation to law enforcement and police and fire funding. And so they both had new revenue sources this year, and they both underutilized those new revenue sources this year. So I wrote a series of articles about both city and county business.
So now, based on some of John Riccio's articles, whether it's under his name or one of the other names, it seems that he is pretty directly in favor of recalling John West. Is that kind of where you were bringing him into the story?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So it's no secret that he's in support of the yes on the recall effort. Okay. And so he's actually contributed some in-kind things to the recall effort. It's no secret that he's a supporter of ours, and that's because I and others have provided him with the factual details behind our recall points, and so he has reviewed all those factual details and he agrees with those, and so he's written some articles about the recall. I've penned a couple of articles about the recall effort and about why all the facts behind the recall are, absolutely true. And so again, I'm happy to be here to explain why they're true and how they're true. But Commissioner West, to get back to your point about why has nobody filed something, Commissioner West has reacted to the Grants Pass Tribune's articles about the recall. If you read the lawsuit that Commissioner West filed against the owner of the Grants Pass Tribune,
yes,
it reads a lot of the lawsuit reads like a point by point. This recall petition point isn't true. This recall point isn't true, and I know they're true because I helped draft those recall petition points.
And this is essentially like a libel lawsuit, right? Like a slander lawsuit. Libel if it's written, slander if it's spoken, right? Is that the legal term? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. What struck me when I read, I got the copy of the lawsuit from a public records request. And what struck me when I read through it, I was like, okay, he's arguing the petition points of the recall essentially, and he didn't. And he's making this guy seem to be the author and the ringleader of the recall effort, and which is absolutely not true. I've kept him informed of our progress along the way because he's media. We've kept the Daily Courier informed of our progress along the way. We've kept other media sources informed of our progress along the way, and some have chose to write about it, some have chose not to.
Okay.
But the point is, Commissioner West is a lot of people have said, and I will also say this, that he acts as a bully and intimidates people with lawsuits when somebody gets in his way. And this has happened over and over again, and he's increasingly doing that, which is a very costly thing for him and whoever's involved in the lawsuit. And I see the same things happening in the way that he governs Josephine County as well. We're going to start to see a whole bunch of lawsuits from county employees for improper treatment. And that's an opinion. That's not a fact. That's just what I see happening because I've served in a director role for a local government agency about the same size as Josephine County. So I've seen what happens when you treat employees a certain way and you don't follow the proper, progressive discipline or whatever the case may be. So I see the risk of extremely high legal costs and lawsuit costs. The same thing that he is now starting to see personally is going to start to filter into Josephine County. But when you cannot file an elections law violation allegation confidentially. So I couldn't go on to report to the Secretary of State that Mr. West has broken the law and I can't do that confidentially. I have to give my name. I have to say, here's my name. I'm an Oregon resident. I believe this person has violated election laws, and here's why. Here's the documentation.
What you're getting at is that the reason that nothing has come from these campaign finance law violations is because people are worried about retribution, legal retribution.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Interesting. So one of my thoughts on this is, you've said that this is a tactic that you believe John West implements, which is, basically using lawsuits to bully people. But when it comes to the Grants Pass Tribune, West is not the only person who has brought a lawsuit against this. Chris Barnett has also brought a libel lawsuit against the Grants Pass Tribune, basically for the same thing, basically that he feels he's being slandered. So, there's a common denominator here, which is the Grants Pass Tribune. But do you feel there's legitimacy to Chris Barnett's lawsuit?
Absolutely not. In fact, the common denominator is not the Grants Pass Tribune. The common denominator is political allies of Commissioner West. So Chris Barnett has been Commissioner West's real estate agent for 15 years. He admitted that on the Bill Maher radio show.
Yeah.
And in fact, that was 2 weeks after, in a commissioner meeting, he said he had no business with West. And then less than 2 weeks later, he was on the Bill Maher show saying, "Oh, I've been Commissioner West realtor for 15 years."
End his business with Chris Barnett shortly before or after being elected, though, didn't he?
I'm sure he did.
Okay.
That would be completely inappropriate. But,
sure, yeah.
And they're clearly allies. I mean, Commissioner West donated to Chris Barnett's campaign. He's been Barnett has been his real estate agent for 15 years, according to what Barnett said on a radio show. They're close political allies. So that's the common link here.
Chris Barnett did bring his lawsuit before West, though.
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But they used the same attorney.
Oh, interesting.
If you read the language in the Barnett lawsuit and then you read the language in the West lawsuit, not only was it from the same attorney, but it was very similar language. And so I would guess that the owner of the Grants Pass Tribune, when he responds to these lawsuits, I'm going to say, grab your popcorn and read all about that, because and
we'll have to try and cover it on the podcast.
I would encourage you to invite him to the podcast. I can't speak for him.
That might be interesting. Yeah, I did just kind of call him a fake and a fraud. So hopefully I haven't discouraged him.
Keep an open mind.
Maybe it'd be a good option for him to explain himself. Why he keeps these pen names.
I am a contributing writer of the Grants Pass Tribune, and so I guess you could. I'm not paid for it. I'm just doing it to help get the facts out about some issues that I think are important to the community.
So honest opinion, do you think there is any credibility to either of these lawsuits against the Grants Pass Tribune?
I do not, and that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're talking about this is because not in the Barnett lawsuit, but in the John West lawsuit against him, he for $500,000, he goes. Many of the points in the recall petition are you'll see them in the lawsuit. That would be, and I know they're true because I helped write them and I helped document the facts behind these petition points. And the way that it was written, the way the lawsuits were written, are very, very misleading in my personal opinion. Because I asked, it was just a few days ago. I had to go to the owner of the Grants Pass Tribune a few days ago, and I had to say, "I'm sorry you got dragged into this," because if you read the lawsuit, many of the points in the petition are what West is complaining about, and so I'm actually, at some level, I'm sorry for him, all the time that you have to spend responding to a lawsuit, and there are always costs involved when you have to respond to a lawsuit, and so I think it's going to be very costly for, when you get into lawsuits, really the only winners are attorneys in some cases, in many cases. And so I feel kind of bad about that. But, I think that both Chris Barnett and Commissioner West made a pretty bad decision filing a lawsuit against him because free speech, media, this is First Amendment rights type stuff.
Yeah. Well, of course, free speech does not include slander, so I guess if that's the point of view they're coming from. But I guess I would just like to know is like, so it sounds like you really think this was just legal bullying, and so, it's not, it's not inconsequential to lose a lawsuit. Like it's going to have a negative effect. Financially damage, Chris Barnett and Wes for doing this. And so you really think that he has that much of a vindictiveness towards this publisher or towards the recall petitioners that he's willing to lose money on this lawsuit? Because one of the things that I think is really interesting about West's election to office is that, from my understanding, he actually took a pay cut for being in office. He had to kind of step aside from some of his businesses, and it's not as if he's been personally financially benefiting from this. So yeah, I guess I just want to kind of hear your thoughts on, like, you really think that this is about the vindictiveness against the petitioners and that sort of thing? Like, you don't think it's just about him holding his own, trying to stay in office to keep doing the work that he kind of got elected to do? Or
it's not necessarily for financial benefit, although there can be financial benefits depending on how government official fulfills their agenda. I mean, how this, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to talk about how, members of Congress get rich being being paid.
It's not necessarily the paycheck where they make the money. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very,
you could get rich just by following Pelosi's stock market, trends.
Exactly. And being somewhat of a stock market watcher myself, I'm fairly familiar with the Pelosi pickings. But
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Anyways, there are benefits besides the direct salary amounts or the loss of income by choosing to serve.
Have you seen some evidence of those benefits?
I'm not going to go there in Commissioner West's case.
Okay.
But when you have a goal of pursuing a specific agenda, and you're willing to invest in that agenda because you see it as the good thing for not necessarily yourself, but for the community or for certain sectors of business, for example. I'm not going to go there with Commissioner West. I will say that I have observed a lot of people in the community feel like his decisions are for self-serving purposes. I'm not going to personally say that, but I have observed a lot of members of the community that do feel that way, and so you can't tell anybody how they should feel about an issue when they see certain things lined up and they say certain things like this is self-serving. You can't discount. I've learned that you can't tell people how they should feel. That's inappropriate. And if somebody feels that way, there's usually a good reason for that. I'm not going to personally say that he's doing it for personal financial means, but what he is doing is he's investing for a certain outcome, and that outcome in many cases is how he makes his decisions and how he governs leaves a lot of people out of the equation. He represents everybody in Josephine County, but the people that he makes decisions for in a favorable light is a relatively small group of people. And if we have time, I would love to talk about how when my business, one of the businesses that I own a portion of and that I serve as an officer for, it's a local business. We're in the mineral development industry. When we brought an application to lease a piece of county property, and this application came before the county when Commissioner West was a commissioner last year.
This was permission to mine on a new piece of property?
This was a lease application. The way that we were treated, and I haven't spoken a lot. I've done a lot of video interviews related to why we filed the recall the way we did, and I haven't spoken a lot about this, and because this is not about me, it's not about the application, it's not about how poorly Commissioner West and one other commissioner treated us during that application process. But that's another example of. So we're in the same business that Commissioner West is in. We actually expected him. We expected him to be an ally of ours when he got into office in early 2023, because he's done work in the timber and in the mining industry. He's got some businesses in the timber and mining industry, and so he actually attacked us when we put in an application to try to do business with Josephine County, and why we couldn't figure out. For the life of us, we couldn't figure out why he attacked us. So it's some sort of personal vendetta against me or one of the owners of my company. I don't know, but the bottom line is across all of these community concerns, whether it's my business or the library district or the people out in Williams and other parts of Josephine County that are upset about the whole Pipe Fork forestry property deal that went bad. All of these, the common thread among all of these things is Commissioner West doesn't like something about those groups. And so therefore he's not willing to give them a fair chance at doing business with Josephine County or making a decision that they would rightfully get if they were a political ally of Commissioner West. And so he's serving his political allies, I'll say. He's serving his political allies. Everybody else is left out of the equation, and that's not how local government is supposed to operate.
So, we're coming up on, we're a bit past an hour here. I want to try and keep it under an hour and a half. One of the things that I would like to ask you about is, that I was disappointed that we weren't able to make that debate happen. I was really looking forward to seeing that come through because, honestly, what I have learned from these podcasts is I can only do so much to shed light as a host because, listen, I work a full-time job. I have multiple businesses, but apart from doing this podcast, but I don't have time to research with the same detail that all the people involved do. And so I really was looking forward to having that debate. And so what I have my views on why I feel it didn't happen. I know I saw that you posted an article with the Grants Pass Tribune kind of explaining why you felt it didn't happen. And, basically, I'll just be super honest, you kind of painted that John West didn't want to be debated because, you wanted him to bring facts and that sort of thing. And he wasn't willing to bring facts and yada, yada, yada. I saw the list of terms you gave. In my opinion, they were very restrictive. I don't know anybody who would agree to the terms that you gave. I won't go into detail with them on the podcast. I personally thought they were very restrictive. I'm not surprised that John West turned them down. And he was the one that originally wanted to debate. So I'll be honest, I felt like your article was a bit of a misrepresentation of the issue. But regardless, because that debate is not happening, what is something that you would have liked to have said to John West? What are some things that you would have liked to ask him to gain clarity that you did not understand about his decision making? What is some of the ways that you would have wanted to hold his feet to the fire? Why did you do this? Why did you make this decision like that? What is something that you would have liked to have asked him if that debate had happened? Yeah.
So the reason that we put forward some requirements for the debate was that we were very upset that after we filed the recall petition, Mr. West came out with some public rebuttals. He's done a number of video interviews with you and Mike Jones. He's done radio interviews with Bill Meyer. He has made, in the process of making public statements as a rebuttal to the recall petition that we filed, he's made a number of false statements that we know without a shadow of a doubt are false statements. And then he sues the owner of the Grants Pass Tribune for $500,000 and for his support of some of these recall points. And so we had to take a very serious, we had to very seriously consider whether it's the right thing to debate him in person. So
what were you so you were worried about the legal retribution if you were to come in on here and debate him? Because I believe like one of the questions I asked you on one of our phone calls was like, you say he makes these false statements. You say that you can prove that they're false statements because you have the facts on your side. Why not take that to the debate? Why put all these restrictive terms in here to kind of, torpedo this debate? If you have the facts on your side, why not use this as an opportunity to call out like, hey, we have the facts, this guy doesn't?
Well, that's, partially what we're doing right now. But so we are, what we did was we challenged him to bring his facts behind behind what we wanted. We were very upset about the false statements that he made. So we wanted him to bring proof that what his statements, we will provide. If he came back to us and he said, please provide evidence of X, Y, and Z that's in your recall petition, we would have done that. We asked him to do that because, for one, we didn't want to blindside him because he's lawsuit happy. We didn't want to blindside him and say, right in the middle of the debate, well, here's X, Y, and Z point. And, some of this stuff is frankly quite nuanced, and we don't want to blindside him. We don't want to treat him inappropriately. So we wanted to give him as much heads up as possible on the items that we wanted to talk about and why why we believe the petition points are true and why we believe some of the false statements that he's made since the filing of the recall petition are false. And so we wanted to give him ample opportunity to provide factual detail behind some of the things that he said in rebuttal to the recall petition. Mm-hmm. We don't want to blindside him, because if he feels like he's being attacked or blindsided, he might file a lawsuit against us. In fact, it was on I think it was on the Bill Maher radio show. He's done so many interviews since the filing of the recall petition. I'm having a hard time remembering them all, but I believe it was on the Bill Maher show. It was either on Bill Maher or I think it was about one of his appearances on the Bill Maher show. He actually threatened to sue the chief petitioner, Lily Morgan. Mm-hmm. He threatened to bring a lawsuit against her, and this was just a few weeks ago. And so we had to be very careful, and we don't. When
I've he's mentioned this to me as well, that he was considering bringing a lawsuit against it, and of course the thing about a recall petition is that it's very strict. The rules around bringing a recall petition is that if there is anything not factual, anything not true in there, it's a crime, and so he seems to believe very strongly that there are things that were not true in there, and that's why he considered the option of a lawsuit, I suppose. But yes, I do know that he was considering that.
Yeah, and so that's
which would naturally be concerning as the
lawsuit is very concerning, and so we actually knew that that he has done several lawsuits against people that he disagrees with many times, even long before we filed the recall petition. And so we spent almost 2 months from start to finish, from start with a few of the group of Republicans that wanted to hold one of our own accountable, when we started saying, okay, the community feedback and the feedback we're getting from all these groups that feel like they've been wronged by Commissioner West is that we need to move forward with this recall. From that point up until we actually filed the recall, we spent almost 2 months developing the language and gathering all the factual detail and documentation of what happened, how did it happen, and we can factually back up everything in the recall. So I know, because of the time we put into that, we were very concerned. Recall, any sort of elections measure is a very, very serious undertaking. We were very concerned. So we went out of our way to make absolutely sure we could back up at each and every point in the recall petition. So we know we can. And so it's very, very concerning to us that he's considering a lawsuit. And the way, so back to the Grants Pass Tribune thing. The Grants Pass Daily Courier has said almost the same things that the Tribune has said about the recall points, as far as them being true and backing them up. And so, why has he filed a lawsuit against the Grants Pass Tribune? Because the Daily Courier has written many of the same things about these recall points too. So he is singling out people that he sees as his political opponents and filing lawsuits against them. And so we had to take.
Why does he not see the Courier as a political opponent if they're
he
getting
does.
the same view? Okay,
he does, but why has he filed a recall against a new small startup media source in Grants Pass, but he has not filed a lawsuit against the Courier? Well, that's because the Courier is a larger, more established business, and he can't intimidate them as easily as he could intimidate somebody like a new startup business in Grants Pass. Okay. So that's again. My personal opinion,
sure.
But we had to be very careful. So the last thing we wanted to do is, in a live debate on TOG, the last thing we wanted to do was blindside him and make him feel like he's being attacked, because this is.
So after you extended that olive branch and you were like, hey, these are the things that we would like to kind of hold your feet to the fire on, did you not feel like the work was done and you were fine to go into this debate, whether he brought facts, documents with him or not?
No, we wanted him to back up the false statements. If he truly believes in these statements that he's made, why wouldn't he want to bring documentation of that? Mm-hmm. And that was our biggest concern is, so if he's going to file a lawsuit against people that he disagrees with, and he's going to use these recall petition points as part of his lawsuit, well, we know that they're all true because we spent 2 months of time studying these things.
Just to interrupt for a sec, if you were to show up to a debate and he didn't bring things to back up his points, would that not just make you guys look better and make sure you won, because it would prove that you're right and that he didn't have things to back these up?
Like, why not look at it as just another argument to use in the debate, I suppose?
Well, again, this is in the legal arena, and he has sued. He has already sued at least one person and listed the recall petition points as reasons he has sued them. So we want to get from him, what are your support for backing up your statements? Because you're saying that our statements are wrong. So we will agree to bring backup for any of the statements that we've made. We just want you to do the same. And
was it almost in part wanting to have more information on whether or not he actually had standing for a lawsuit against you guys?
No, not necessarily, but we have provided all of the support. Anytime somebody has asked us for support for any of the recall petition points, we've happily provided that. We wanted him to do the same. We wanted him to actually, he just keeps saying over and over again that the recall is a bunch of lies. Well, we know it's not, because we spent 2 months developing the language. So why, bring your proof as to why you think they're lies. Is that an unreasonable request?
No, but I do think it's important to point out, I know we said we weren't going to go too deep into your terms for the debate, but I think it's important to bring out that the bringing of factual information was only one of the terms and was probably the least contentious of all the terms.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and like I said, we don't need to get into all the terms on the show, but no, I suppose. Listen, I can understand it, and I can understand why the threat of a potential lawsuit would kind of add this additional stress, where you want to kind of walk on eggshells before entering into a public debate. Like I said, I was a bit disappointed we weren't able to make it happen. I appreciate you coming on the show to do a little bit more, but back to kind of my original question. Had that debate happened, what kind of would have been your approach, or what would have been some of the questions that you would have loved to have gotten more clarity from John West on? What would you have wanted to ask him about particularly?
Yeah, now that you ask that, it's a little even more clear in my mind now as far as why we asked him to bring factual documentation to back up some of the things that he said. So had we been in a live debate, I didn't want to upset him like Trump upsetted Biden before Biden had to drop out of the presidential race. So
okay.
if you watch those debates, you kind of know what I'm saying. So so Biden got kind of confused about certain things. So the last thing that I wanted to do and we wanted to do was to blindside him with some facts. So part of the concerns, part of my concerns and our concerns is that anytime that we have a concern about something going on with the county, and we try to get those concerns across to the commissioners, but in particular Commissioner West, they haven't been responsive to those concerns. And so, let's just take one of the issues that I know the best. So when a company that I serve as a chief financial officer for is a local company called American Mineral Research. We put in an application, and this is one of the issues that's listed in our 13-page fact sheet on recalljohnwest.com. So this is, since I'm the one that put in the application to Josephine County for a lease on county-owned land, I know this issue, just as well as anyone, so I can use this as a prime example. So, we thought that Commissioner West, being somebody who has worked in the timber and mining industry had several businesses in that arena, we thought he would be very favorable for us applying to do a mineral development project on county-owned land. And so we were pretty blindsided, but we put in this application in May of 2023. So this is 5 months into Commissioner West's term as commissioner.
Okay.
There's a county code that governs the application process, what the county needs in order to grant a lease. And so we meet all those terms. To this day, we meet all those terms. And Commissioner West, when they have never decided on our application. So that's one example of how they've broken.
So it wasn't outright denied. It was just kind of set aside and never addressed.
Exactly. So That's one example of how Commissioner West has broken the county law, the county code. The county code says if you do X, Y, and Z and you apply for a county lease, a mining lease on county land, you shall be granted a lease. Well, we meet all those terms because Commissioner West.
So it's not at the commissioner's discretion to deny or approve those leases?
Not if you follow the terms of the county law. It's not. And so he has said, Commissioner West I've sent, if you read there was a big article that came out in the sneak preview recently that also landed in mailboxes last Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. And so as I was doing an interview with Curtis, who owns the sneak preview newspaper, I told him a little bit about how Commissioner West treated us during this application process. And I said, he didn't follow the law and he didn't recognize us, and he didn't. Anytime we've asked him questions about, hey, why are you not acting on our application? Why are you not doing X, Y, Z? Why are you not giving us an opportunity to answer the questions that you had when we gave a presentation to you about this last September? He's never responded. And so
ghosted you.
I don't
it's
know.
For our Gen Z viewers.
It's definitely,
but yeah,
definitely ghosting.
So no response, never heard anything.
So I would have loved to, in a live debate on TOG, I would have loved to ask him questions.
Why that happened.
Questions about why did he do that? But I'm not sure if he even understands our concerns because he's never responded to any of our emails that express those concerns to him. So I don't want to blindside him with, hey, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z when the county code says X, Y, and Z? Because I'm not sure if he's even aware of what he did because he's never been responsive to our concerns. And so it just seemed like a setup to embarrass somebody. And I don't want to do that.
And you were worried that it would provoke him or something? Yeah.
He's very prone to anger. The lawsuits are a clear sign of that. He has sued the county clerk, which I don't know what's going to come of that, but I know that because of the way we gathered signatures and the way we checked the names against the county voter registered database, I know that we have enough valid signatures to move forward. So I think that it was a mistake to file a lawsuit against the county clerk.
Yeah. One more question on, and we do got to kind of wrap this up, and I really appreciate you taking this time and going into all the detail here. One other question was on the recall petition and the way that it was filed. So apparently there's a process for counting the signatures where they counted a samples of the signatures, like 10% or something, and then based on that number, they just kind of use that to say that, okay, based on this percentage that we have enough signatures or whatever. Apparently, that's not the process that they're supposed to use, and they actually are supposed to individually count each signature. Do you know if anything is going to happen with that? Is there going to be a problem with that later because they didn't count each individual signatures but only took a sample size?
Well, that is. I can't speak to that legally because I'm told by some people that there's a legal provision that requires that anytime you have a large number of signatures that a county clerk has to verify or the Secretary of State has to verify. Anytime you have a large number of signatures, I'm told there's a Secretary of State. There's a manual put out by the Secretary of State that. Anytime there's over a certain amount of signatures, you have to use the 10% sampling process. So it actually, the process that the county clerk used came right out of a Secretary of State manual. And typically those manuals are developed from state law, not just, randomly develop certain procedures because they feel like it. Usually there's a law or, some sort of legal reference as to why they wrote the manual the way they did. And so the court is ultimately going to have to decide, does that law or manual, whatever laws or administrative procedure is behind that manual, does that supersede the law that Commissioner West cited in his lawsuit? But anyways,
do you see any problems with it, or do you think it'll just move forward as usual?
I think because ballots are out And because I know that we have enough valid signatures that we turned in over 7,500 signatures. We were required to turn in 6,400 and something signatures. Mm-hmm. And I know because we were cross-referencing the names with the voter database at the time that we were gathering signatures, I know we have enough valid signatures, so I'm not concerned about that.
So even if they did kind of dig into it, you think it would still turn out that you had enough signatures?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so I'm not worried about that, but it's another example of the intimidation type processes that Commissioner West uses with lawsuits to intimidate anybody that he disagrees with, and he'll, it feels like a very bullying tactic to me. But he doesn't know that we verified all the names, and so if he wants the county clerk to count all the names, that's fine. But I would imagine a reasonable judge would say, okay, if the law that Commissioner West cited in his lawsuit, if the judge says, yes, that's the right thing to follow, and the county clerk has to look at, instead of looking at a 10% sample, the county clerk has to look at 100% of the signatures. Mm-hmm. I think that would be the right thing to do. But they would let whatever the results of the election, they would let that stand. Okay. Whether
as long as it did come through and show the signatures. Yeah,
and if it didn't, after checking 100% of the signatures, then the results of the election would be void. But I know for a fact that we have enough signatures, so that's not something I'm worried about. So I think ultimately, I think it might slow down the certification of the election, but I would hope that it wouldn't decertify the election.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap up this episode. In honor of our debate that we weren't able to make happen, why don't you give me your 60-second closing statement? What would you like people to know about this recall petition before they go and vote? What are the key points? What's your pitch here?
So. Key points is I would encourage everybody to, if you had any questions, you can reach out to us. The key facts are at recalljohnwest.com. We've been very concerned about the decisions, and all the points in the petition. Any of the fact-based points in the petition are absolutely true. We can back up any of that. So go into this on the assumption that they are true, because we can back them up. And if they are true, what do you personally think? Is that enough? Is that enough to recall him from office? We've now got 75. In a period of 90 days, we gathered 7,500 and something signatures of people that think the voters should either think that he should be recalled from office, or think that at a minimum the voters should decide. So the facts are absolutely true. We've been even more disappointed in Commissioner West's reaction to this recall petition, because we've now got dozens of documented lies that he's made. This has become a very ugly battle of who's got the facts and who's telling the truth. And we know that we are. And we encourage anybody who's questioning the recall petition points to reach out to us, because we can back up everything in the recall petition. So this has unfortunately been kind of divisive for the community, and I would just encourage everybody to seek the truth. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about the truth. We didn't even get into all the details that I thought we would get into today, but let me just say that everything in our petition is true. And for those that are saying otherwise, I would encourage an open and honest debate, because that's not what we're seeing right now. In fact, just 2 days ago, the 3 chief spokespersons for the recall effort were given a veiled death threat by one of the John West supporters. And that's not healthy, especially when it comes from the local Josephine County Republican Party leadership. And that's where it came from, unfortunately. So some breaking news on TOG for the first time. We haven't publicized any of that. We're still trying to
feel free to send us any information on it. Maybe we can include some stuff in the episode if you feel that it's appropriate to do that. So recalljohnwest.com if anybody would like to learn more. We will be hosting John West. Tomorrow is when we'll be recording the episode. We'll see how we post these videos. It might be day 1 and day 2 that we end up posting them in that order. It'd be great if we could kind of post them around the same time. Encourage everyone to watch this episode in its entirety, of course, and then watch the John West episode that follows. Jay Meredith, I appreciate you so much for being here.
Yeah, and given that ballots are out as we speak and people are starting to vote as we speak, I would encourage you to post.
We're going to get these up soon.
But I would encourage you to post both of these videos at the same time. So equal rights, equal representation. That's kind of a key thing for any media source that wants to be unbiased and just wants to, give everybody equal chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Jay Meredith, I appreciate it.
Thank you.